Yo, yo,
Morning, what's going on, Dupré?
yo. Good day, brother. How you?
I'm doing great, man. It's really great to have you on the show. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm a big
Man,
fan of your
thanks for
music,
having
man.
me, for real.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to picking your brain a bit on music, because you've had such a big impact on such a big part of music history. But I figure we can start off talking a little bit about your current endeavor in your campaign for councilman of Westward and Newark. I mean, how did you get involved in politics? Where did this all begin?
I think, it was just my ties with hip hop, my love for hip hop. I feel like hip hop has always been, a platform where we talk about our social injustices and social ills that was going on within um, the culture of hip hop. And being that I come from that culture, my manager understood that at the time, and he would allow me to. He was an aide to one of our councilmen in our city back in the early '90s, late '80s, and he would, once we got our record deal, he would make sure that we continue to stay connected to the community, and he would make sure that Lords of the Underground had a presence within the community. If people, he would always say, if people could buy your records, then you can support them as well in the community. And then, that was just one case of it where I got introduced to politics from him doing work with Councilman um, Ralph T. Grant Sr. But another case is when I started to get into the game, I had a conversation with Tupac, and Tupac was saying sort of the same thing at a young age of 20, that we should sell millions of records so we can get millions of fans to become voters. Millions of voters can get us elected into office and to go back to live in our communities and do things in our communities with youth initiatives and stuff like that. So it's so many people that played a part in me saying, you know what, I'm going to run for office. And especially the people of Newark, New Jersey. I have a nonprofit organization called 211 Community Impact. And through that nonprofit organization, the people wanted to hear my voice. They wanted me to be the voice for the voiceless in a lot of instances. So I started to do that with my actions and not just my words. And that's how it kind of led to where we are today. It kind of progressed into where we are today for me having aspirations to take a, seek a legislative road as Westward councilman of Newark, New Jersey, and be able to really have a seat at the table and a voice for the community.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to see that you can do more with the music than Like, obviously, you're going to be touching people on a political level, but it's great to see people who are active in charities and active in the community outside of the music, because it's hard to balance. I mean, do you feel like it's more difficult to navigate a political atmosphere, or is it easier than the music industry? I mean, what's the kind of challenges that you run into that you really weren't prepared for during your time in the music industry?
I think it depends on who you are as a person and what your agenda is and what you want to see accomplished in your neighborhoods. Some people don't really care. Hip hop was a culture that I got involved in because I love this platform. And what I mean by that is I loved how they talked about things that meant something to us. And when I say us, that's anybody and everybody who was involved in the culture, from graffiti to DJing to b-boying, which was, breakdancing and fashion, to MCing, so to beatboxing even back in those days. So anybody who took a part in the culture to add to the whole, to get a total result, I wanted to do that for them. You remember when in the late 70s to the 80s, the late 80s, they started to say disco sucks. When disco was the culture that the people who are now hip-hop lovers, well, the forefathers who became hip-hop lovers, disco and light rock music was leading the culture. And then when we started to not believe in the culture of disco, we started to create our own voice, which sounded like hip-hop, even though it wasn't called hip-hop yet. It was the voice that we spoke about, the things that we weren't accepted in or around or as a part of. So we created hip-hop so we can be that part, so we can be that voice, so we can be that thing that we weren't included in. We created our own.
Now, do you
know, and
do you feel like that always comes across well in the electorate, or do you think sometimes that it's tough to be understood correctly? Because I mean, some people hear about things that are important to hip hop culture, like graffiti, for example, and they have these negative connotations that, you know, they're not necessarily, they don't understand where it comes from and the positive things that come out of it because of just what they see on the news, per se, or, you know, are there things that don't really come across the way you'd like, that's sometimes tough to communicate with the electorate on?
I think that anything that's not understood always gets a pushback. So anything that is new will usually get a pushback initially. If it does not mix in or conform to what's actually happening at the current time. Hip hop is just that. If you look at its word, hip is being in the knowing, being in the now. Hop is a form of movement. So if you look at it like that, it's a now movement. So it always forever stays young. Whatever the now movement is, this culture actually pushed forward. So to answer your question, does it come across to the electorate? It doesn't. It depends on who they are. You have to understand hip-hop is almost 50 years old. So if we have politicians who are 70 years old, they might not get it all the way. But now, since hip-hop is almost 50, 60-year-olds, you know, are getting it. Ice-T is 64, 63, something like that. So hip-hoppers are starting to get, as hip-hop gets old, then the people who run our society gets older as well. And now that they're getting older, they usually can relate to the things that coincides with them when they were just young people, when they were young teenagers, when they were young adults. So now it's having more of an understanding. And when you understand something, you have more of a connection to it, and you can relate to it more. And that's what's happening. Politics is getting the politicians are getting older, but hip hop is getting older. So that means the people who grew up in hip hop, they understand the voice, they understand the language. See, it's about comprehension. Communication is important, but really comprehension is a key factor to communication. If you do not understand the comprehension of the, you know, I can speak to you in Russian. If you don't understand Russian, you know, then we're communicating with each other, but you don't understand me. It's a time now, hip-hop has been communicating with society and politics for years and years and years, but the politicians could not comprehend it. But now they're able to comprehend it a lot, so now they're able to communicate better, and we can have a better relationship. So, yeah, if hip-hop can get politicians elected, then politicians should elect a hip-hopper.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to see, you know, someone from the arts and the entertainment industry, you know, try to bring together, you know, politics and artists. Because obviously, you know, you've got events that you're hosting that, you know, big names in hip-hop are showing up to and to get involved. And, you know, that's got to be a strange thing for other politicians to see. I mean, has your presence in Newark politics kind of made hip-hop a part of the political community in Newark, or is there still some separation there where you feel like people aren't necessarily getting on board with the hip-hop crowd in the area and how it's affecting politics in the area?
I think people who oppose a team or the politics or the administration that I'm a part of or the ideologies that I'm a part of, people who oppose that, they try to use negative connotations about hip-hop. While they'll say that, oh, he's just a rapper. But what's happening is we have a young mayor in Mayor Ras J. Baraka. And when I say a young mayor, he's only 50 plus years old. That means that he grew up on hip-hop. So he understands the power of art. He's a poet himself. He's an artist himself. So the young people, they grew up in hip-hop. The middle-aged people, 40 to 60, they grew up in hip-hop. It's only the elders who need to be educated on what's going on. It's almost like cannabis being legalized, right? The people who are older, they know that in their minds, cannabis has always been programmed as this gateway drug in their mind. So they are less likely to just jump at legalization of cannabis. But the people who grew up to a Cypress Hill, to a Redman, to a Cheech and Chong, they understand that it's about time that we're taking precautions and the right measures to legalize it. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing with hip-hop. People who grew up with it, who know about it, and now that it's becoming legal, they are with it. The same thing with hip-hop. People who grew up with it, they're now in politics, and they understand it. But the elders have to be educated on it. And the same thing with cannabis. The elders have to be educated on what CBD does and THC does, because they knew it, and they grew to know it to be something else. Just like hip-hop. The elders grew to know it to be something else. The youthful, young people, and middle-aged people, they understand that it's the coming of time.
Well, I'm sure it's a big generational thing, but I think, even more than the passage of time, it probably means a lot to older politicians getting that understanding that you're going to them and that you're getting involved in their process. So they kind of have to see your point of view. They have to kind of learn about other views on this matter and like how the younger generation feels. So it's refreshing to see that those like two worlds collide like that.
Yeah.
But when you're doing,
it's definitely refreshing.
I mean, do you feel like this is more of a local politics issue for you, or do you also touch the sphere of more like the federal level of like national politics?
I think that this is a national thing. Not only will I make history in the city of Newark, New Jersey, even though we're starting locally, this is a national thing. See, local politics are what federal politics are what they are because of local politics. And I say that it's a national thing because I will make history as being the first platinum-selling hip-hop artist to ever become an elected official inside of America. Now, Sean Poe has done it worldwide he became the first elected official in the world by becoming an elected official in Belize City, Belize. So this is national. We just brought Shine to Newark, New Jersey, and we made Belize City, our mayor Raz Baraka and chief of staff Amiri Baraka. They made our cities sister cities. So Newark, New Jersey, and Belize City, Belize are sister cities. Hip hop did that. You understand what I'm saying? So we're all I'm saying is that now you can use Dupré, Kelly, and Shine as models. You can use Belize City and Newark, New Jersey as blueprints. When I ran for the first time in 2018 for councilman at large in my city, it made Scarface run for councilman in his city in the wards in Texas. It made his partner Willie D run as well. It made Luke run in Miami. Now these guys didn't win. Maybe their cities weren't ready for it, but just by taking the action, it showed people that you can be it, that you can do it. And now it's back around to me, so we're going to continue to do it. And we're having conversations, great conversations with people like Killer Mike, and who knows politics. He might doesn't want to be a politician, but you don't have to be a politician to be involved in politics. You have Teslin Figueroa, a female who is nothing but hip hop, but she is leading broadcast and commentary and political commentary. So this is about to be regular, especially after I get elected. It's going to be the norm.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're paving the way for a lot of artists, and I feel like getting people comfortable with that idea that, just because you're getting involved with politics doesn't mean you have to be a career politician. You can have some diversity in what you're bringing to the table, and it's definitely refreshing to see people like Killer Mike and the Ghetto Boys talking about politics, because that's kind of what helps make being aware hip. It makes it a part of the dialogue for everybody, not just the people who are conventionally interested in politics, but also just fans of hip hop who might not have thought about it before, but can actually make a difference once they start to pay attention. So again, it's good to see those worlds colliding and see you paving the way. It's a really interesting thing to watch, and I wish you the best of luck in this campaign. It's so cool to see. But on another level of what's going on in Newark, I wanted to ask you what's got you excited right now in the Newark music scene? What's been going on and what's changing right now?
There's a lot of excitement in Newark music scene. I get excited when I see young people chase their passion, because I was that guy. You know what I mean? I get excited when I see people just get so infused in the culture, and they want to add on and make their difference and make their mark in the culture that has now become the pop culture of the world. That gets me excited, because creativity doesn't have any rules to it. Creativity doesn't really have a pattern. So to be able to watch new creators, young creators design and control and make something their own, it's exciting to me, man. So I just salute all of the creators, especially in Newark, New Jersey, because I feel like Newark, New Jersey is so talented, as it showed. Newark, New Jersey showed the world in the 90s with groups like Queen Latifah, Redman, Naughty by Nature, Lords of the Underground, the Fugees, Outkast, Outsiders, even the Outlaws, most of the Outlaws, and Wise Intelligence, and Poor Righteous Teachers, and YZ, and Channel Live, and Artifacts, and Rod Digger. All of these people, and this was all in the 90s. So if we can have a conglomerate of MCs and entertainers just be so prolific in the era which is called the golden era, I just can only imagine if what these young people are about to do now.
Are there any particular artists in like the newest generation of musicians in Newark that you think are really doing a good job of leading the charge?
Yeah, I mean, you got people, shout out to Griselda, right? Even though they're from Buffalo, we have a group here who reminds me of Griselda before I even heard of Griselda. We have 050 Boys, we have Chad B, we have Samad Savage, we have who else? We got so many people, man. We got Khalil Gibran. We got Bump Pro. We have so many different people, man, that are so amazing that it's just amazing, man. We have a lot of great talent here in Newark, New Jersey. We got Big Moose and just a bunch of different, the 280 Boys, the Zone Boys. We got a lot of people who are making strides, man, and I salute all of them.
Yeah, well, I hope I get to make my way down there soon enough and familiarize myself with the scene more. But it's obviously it's a historical place, and it's a important part of the history. So it's good to hear about what's going on. But I do want to backtrack a little bit to the beginning of your career. I mean, I've heard you tell the story a lot of hearing your uncle listen to Rapper's Delight and how that got you hooked on hip hop. But what were your opinions on music before that point? Before you heard Rapper's Delight, what was really speaking to you, and what was what did you feel about music? Were you interested in becoming a musician?
I was at the cookouts and hearing, Tina Marie, and I was in my mother's living room hearing Shaka Khan and James Brown and Marvin Gaye and, you know, the Temptations and, you know, things like that. That's what I was hearing before I heard Rapper's Delight. You know, I was hearing all of those R&B, rhythm and blues classics and Luther Vandross and Sam and Dave and, you know, people like that. So I was into the funk and into the R&B. Remember, that was the culture for us. So the way hip hop is for us, James Brown and all of those guys, you know, leading the charge for our parents, they were there too. You know, so it's just, when you hear, they were talking about James Brown, you know, it's a man's world, and, you know, talking about I'm black and I'm proud, and, you know, they were leading the culture. The culture was not called hip-hop, but it was still a culture of wanting to be respected, wanting to have civil rights, wanting to be appreciated and accepted. Hip-hop came out on the same thing. You know, the message. It's like a jungle sometimes. It make me wonder how I keep from going under. You know, it was the same type of thing. So when I heard Rapper's Delight, even though this wasn't what my mother was playing in the living room, it still made me go, wow, this is something different. This is something that we can relate to and that we love, that we can learn to love and do, you know. And then when you started to delve into the culture a little more, you found out that this record might have been the first record on the airways for hip-hop in a certain sense, but this wasn't even the tip of the iceberg for the culture. And then you started to understand, like, a lot of the underground, where they got the art from, the forefathers of where they got the art from, and then people started to gravitate to that to create what it is now.
Now, how old were you when you heard Rapper's Delight?
I believe I was 8 years old.
Okay, so
8 or 9.
So at that point,
I think I was 9. I was 9.
Had you been thinking about a career before that point? Were you kind of just like going through life, and then your whole like trajectory got changed?
At that time, I wanted to be a New York Yankee.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I've heard you say you were really into baseball too. Was that just?
Yeah, I wanted to be a New York Yankee at that time.
Yeah. Okay, this is a little off the beaten path of the questions I was going to ask, but has your skills in baseball helped you politically? You ever have to like go and play with some other politicians or the community or anything? Like,
it's funny you say that. So September 25th, Westside Park, Newark, New Jersey, in the Westward that I'm campaigning in, that I grew up in, Redman grew up in, Artifacts grew up in, Rod Digger grew up in. We have a community baseball game against some of the celebrities. Hopefully I can get Redman and the mayor to pitch. But we are playing a community softball game this Sunday, September 25th, 2021, man. So that'll be the first time that I'll be playing against the police and all of these guys.
Very cool, very cool. So I do want to ask you a little bit about, Redman and your other contemporary rappers when you were coming up. But what was the other question I wanted to ask? Oh yeah, James Brown. Before I move on to that, what's something that James Brown taught you, or like what's a song that was kind of a lesson for you in musicality when you were listening to James Brown early on? Because I feel like he had one of the biggest footprints on hip-hop culture of any artist that came before.
I think that James, like for me, just to see how he fought against the system. And what I mean by fighting against the system, I felt like James Brown was a bad mother. Shut your mouth. I felt like, like he didn't even take any smack from anybody. And when you watch all of the stories on him, it was right. I had the opportunity to speak to James Brown in the 90s. We were going through sampling clearances for the album Here Come the Lord. And I got a call down to legal in the EMI building. I believe it was the WIA building. I got a call down to legal, and they said that somebody was on the phone that I had to speak to so we can clear a record. And I had no idea. I went down to legal, and the lawyer handed me the phone, and he said he wanted to speak to me about my lyrics before they can clear a record. So I got on the phone. It was a lawyer on the phone. He said, do it. He said, Dupré Kelly, do it all? I said, yes, sir. He said, hold on for a minute. The next voice I heard was, hey, what you mean? What you mean about jump up and down and wreck the whole town? At this time, James Brown had his situation where he crashed with his wife at the time.
Yeah.
Excuse me, with his wife at the time around Georgia or something. He took the crazy mugshot picture at that time.
Yeah.
So when I said, and here come the laws, I said, get up and down like James Brown, and wreck the whole town on Here Come the Lords, he thought I was disrespecting him about his incident. He's like, you trying to be funny? He's like, you trying to be funny about my situation? And I was like, Mr. Brown, no, wreck in the 90s was a form of, like, nobody can mess with you. You'll destroy anything that come in front of you with your talent. And I'm explaining this to him, and he goes, oh, okay. And then he gave the phone back. And that was my conversation with James Brown. and he cleared the record.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously the samples that came from his music were another huge part of early hip hop. I mean, that funk sound is a big part of the rhythmic influence in a lot of hip hop artists. Do you have a particular favorite James Brown sample?
Yeah, I have when we sampled the drums. His drums were just crazy, man. I know Clarence played for him a lot. His drums is crazy. I love the drums, even though a lot of people used it. I love the drums that we use for Funky Child.
Yo, yeah.
Put your bad self. I just love it, man. Like his drummer, and how he was in the pocket with his band was just unbelievable. You know what I mean? It was just very unbelievable, man. So James Brown was when it comes to his groove was just so beautiful, man. It was like a lot of people couldn't even touch him.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, undeniably one of the most influential musicians ever. And like I said, the influence he's had on rhythm. I mean, I'm a bass player, and I care about the rhythm section so much. And to see where those rhythmic elements have taken us and like evolved into hip hop and the new kinds of grooves that have come out of hip hop, and how you can trace them back to James Brown is a really important part of music to me.
Please state your name after the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
Hey, Dupré?
Yeah, my bad. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, me neither. No worries. But yeah, I was just saying, obviously James Brown had a huge influence on the concept of rhythm and music, and as a bass player, that is always such a profound thing to me, and I really love his music, and I'm a big fan of hip hop and the influence he's had on it. But just one more thing on the topic.
He brought that swing, man. He brought that swing. And I think that because of that swing, people didn't sound so mechanical like music was sounding at one point, other than jazz music. Everything started to sound so mechanical and so right on point that he brought the swing. Like you could be lazy with a snare, or you can let that bass line just hum a little longer. And he brought the swing to it, and hip hop grabbed those best parts of those swings and turned it into the culture what we know it now.
Yeah. One more thing on the topic of samples, though. Do you feel like a really popular sample gets to a point where it's overused, or do you think that just makes the sample that much more legendary when it's been used that many times? Because me personally, I get excited in hip hop when I hear those familiar samples being used. Like, for example, Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, The Show. When I hear, even within just Slick Rick's own discography, the ways that record is flipped and reused, it excites me to hear it in a new context. Do you think that holds up across music, or do you think sometimes the sample gets overused?
think sometimes it can be overused. I'll tell you why. I think sometimes it can be overused because hip-hop is about finding unique sounds. Hip-hop is about finding those best parts of records that you did not even know existed. So when you find those best parts and you recreate them into a jam or a classic, then I don't think it should be reused if it's not done better than the original. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong. Some jams have been reused and have been instant classics all over again. But I think that that's cool depending on who does the creating to it. If you can create it better or make it just as good, then go ahead and use it. But if you don't do it justice, you're just using it just to use it. You know, find your own best part. Find your own best part and make the best thing out of the best part. You know?
Yeah. Now, to get back to where I was going to go before, I wanted to know, how did you first meet Redman? Because I know that you two came up together in the same area, in the same scene. Was it like a gradual thing? Was there a big story out of it? Like, how did that relationship start?
It was just a gradual thing. You know, he lived on 20th Street in between the same, like we lived in a neighborhood which was in between graveyards. So we was like the graveyard boys. You know, Tretch is from 18th Street, but he's on the other side of the graveyard, you know, on the East Orange side. I'm from 19th Street. Redman is from 20th Street. So we're right in between the graveyards, you know, and my block is 19th, Red's is 20th, and then our boys' block is 18th. So we roamed in between the graveyards. If you lived in between the graveyards, you eventually knew each other. We went to the same barbershops. We went to the same corner stores. We hung out on the same corners, you know. So, yeah, it was just a gradual thing. And we just became cool, man, you know, sitting on each other's porches, you know, riding each other's bikes, playing football, then doing other things, to buying cars alike, to, you know, to becoming, you know, doing very well in the rap music industry together. You know, he started at one point he became my DJ.
Yeah.
And he used to DJ for me all around, and he was just an incredible talent, man. His work ethic is amazing, and to this day, you know, he's one of my best friends.
Now, when you started working with him in music, when he became your DJ, was that one of your first experiences working with a DJ? Were you comfortable at that point? Did it go smoothly when you first started working together, or were you working out the kinks? Like, how did it feel when you first started getting going with him?
That wasn't my first experience with a DJ. I was in a group called UCR, the Undercover Rockers, where I had my cousin as my DJ. But I will say this, it was my first experience with a DJ who was a real DJ to me. You know, and Redman was a real DJ to me, man. And that's no disrespect to my cousin, rest in peace, but he was the one who studied. He was the one who practiced. He was the one who looked at records and find the best parts of those records. He was a DJ, man.
Yeah.
And he was a spitter.
Oh yeah, of course. But I didn't. That was something I found out more recently. Was you know, his work as a DJ, and it's an amazing thing to see, because, you know, it's something I'd love to learn more about one day. But it's like I could never. It's so hard to even begin to conceptualize the study it takes to really learn to play vinyl like an instrument, to understand that thought process and that the production that you can make out of it, and it's such a cool skill set to see, you know, artists having. But I guess that was just a big part of early hip hop to begin with. Now, when was it? How long between when you worked with Redman and when you started working with Lords of the Underground? Was that you transitioned from working with him straight into Lords of the Underground, or were they like two pretty distinct periods?
Well, I transitioned because I had got caught up in some trouble, and I had promised my mother that if I get out of this trouble, I would go to college. You know, so I lost my baseball scholarships, everything, and I took a year off. And Redman and we met. I introduced him along with my brother Bree, the beggar, who was on he's the one who's doing the hook on Never Faded. We introduced him to Eric Sermon. And once we introduced him to Eric Sermon, I had already made that promise to my mother that if I got out of my trouble, I would go to college. So I went to college. I went to HBCU in Raleigh, North Carolina, called Shaw University. And Redman went on to record records on EPMD's album. And we still remain friends. So he didn't record as a DJ. He recorded as a rapper because he started writing rhymes when I got in trouble. He started writing rhymes, and he became good at it. So, now in hindsight, even just saying it now, probably when I got in trouble, he probably was like, look, if he's not going to be the rapper, then I'm going to be the rapper. You know what I mean? Because around that time, he started rapping, and he's probably one of the best top 3 MCs in New Jersey, top 5 underground all time, and probably top 10 MC of all time. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show that his work ethic, you put your mind to something, and it happens. So when he got with EPMD, I went to school. I met DJ Lord Jazz, and I met my man Derek, and Derek is actually the cousin of Marley Marl, who was just graduating, and he said that he was going to work for Marley, and that we should he told DJ Lord Jazz that we should make a demo. And Lord Jazz put myself with Funky Man, Al Tariq, and we made Laws of the Underground. So right after Redman, I had gotten to this group, and we came out and really got it going on. So Redman was saving a spot for me in the hit squad, but I guess I didn't need it because we had success with Laws of the Underground and Marley Marl. Yeah.
Now, when you first met Marley Marl, was that, how scary was that? Was it how big was his reputation to you? Was it like working with someone at the top of the game at that point?
What? Marley Marl was a god at that point. He was Russell Simmons at that point.
Okay, I would think so. I mean, but getting into the studio, what were the nerves like?
So I'll tell you this. So I'll give you this. When we first came up to the House of Hits, not the one in Queens, but the one upstate New York, we pull up to this driveway. It's a Saab outside, a 4-door red Saab. All the cars were red. 4-door red Saab outside. There's a red BMW convertible outside. There's it was a black Pathfinder truck outside as well. So there's about 3 or 4 cars in the parking lot. In the driveway. We ring the doorbell. Now before there is the ring doorbell as we have now, Marley had that back then in the 90s.
Yeah.
Where you ring the bell and he can see who's at the door, on camera. So we ring the bell, he speaks from the bell, and next thing you know, the garage door opens up. When the garage door opens up, there's a red 850 in the garage, the one that you see on his album cover. And when that opens up, we start to hear music a little bit, and the music is muffled, and it's like That's what the muffle sound like. Then another door opens up, and when it opens up, there's a sliding window door that goes into Studio A. And right behind us, there's a studio door that goes into Studio B. We go into Studio A, there's a white man there with a long, his name is Frank Heller, who's a great engineered all of our stuff. He has long hair, ponytail in it, and he's engineering with this kind of cut up slim guy who's under the SSL board. Marley and Teddy Riley were only two of the only people who had SSL boards in their homes. There was a guy under the standing who had slid under the SSL board, standing in between the speakers with a red bell Kango on and a white beater on, And that record that was muffled, we learned later to be the mixing of Mama Said Knock You Out. So we walked into the mixing session of Mama Said Knock You Out. Marley walks over to the board. He turns the volume down. And he goes, Todd. He turns around and he said, yo, I want you to meet my new group. Todd, who is LL Cool J, turns around and says, licks his lips and says, what up, B? And then turns the volume back up like, I'm going to knock you out. Mom said knock you out. I turned around to DJ Lord Jazz, excuse me, and Funky Man, and I said, we made it.
Wow.
And then Marley took us upstairs. And when we went upstairs, there was this fat guy with glasses, light-skinned guy, in Studio C, listening to beats. And he goes by the name of Mr. Heavy D.
Oh.
Rest in peace to Heavy D.
Yeah.
This is our first day at the House of Hits. Man, you're talking about three young men from the ghettos of Cleveland, Ohio, and Newark, New Jersey, who are in the presence of their icons, in the presence of people that they looked up to. We're in the same house, same studio, and we feel like we're about to go through the same thing that they're going through right now. So that was our first day at the House of Hits.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like electric. Like I couldn't imagine. You know, I've been like a little starstruck, but to walk into an environment like that, it must be so surreal.
Surreal.
Yeah. Well, it's really amazing to get to hear about, you know, the history behind the music and your thoughts on the music, because it's like I said, I'm a huge fan of the work you've done, and it's so great to get to pick your brain.
Thank you, man.
Before we wrap up, there's one other thing I want to touch on. I'm a huge stand-up comedy nerd, and I was wondering if you have any particular favorite comedians or any good comedian stories or just any thoughts on the art of stand-up comedy.
Man, Richard Pryor, all-time favorite. I love Robin Harris. I love Eddie Murphy. You know, I came up in that era. But I also became friends with comedians like Mike Epps. Shout out to Mike, man. Always shows love, always a genuine guy. You know, he's probably like one of the famous comedians that I'm really cool with. I'm a lover of comedy. So, yeah, man. Mike Epps, man. I got a story of Mike Epps, man.
Okay.
One day, he was performing in New York, and I came to see him. You know, before then, I can't forget Bill Bellamy. So Bill Bellamy, you know, he's from New Jersey. He used to host this comedy show at what was it called? I'm tripping. He used to host a comedy show at the Peppermint Lounge in Newark, New Jersey. So Peppermint Lounge was a stomping ground for, you had to stop through there before you went to Def Comedy Jam. So I forgot the comedian's name, but one day Bill was hosting, and, you know, we're a popular rap group at this time. So I'm in there by myself, and the comedian wants to go in on Lords of the Underground for whatever reason. And all I did was start throwing Heineken bottles at him, man. I forgot this guy's name, but when I see him, I know him. I don't think he became that big. But everybody came through there, from Steve Harvey to Chris Tucker to everybody. And then later on in life, me and Mike Epps got real cool, because these people used to sleep on the floor of one of my homegirls, man. Like, every time they came to New Jersey, and to see them become very successful is just amazing to me. But recently, I say recently, as of maybe the last 5 years ago or 6 years ago, Mike Epps, he did a show in New York. He invited me to come over. Man, when I say it was so much cannabis in that room, all I could say is that Mike Epps got up there and freestyled the whole show because he forgot his whole act. And I always felt like, man, is it my fault? Man, but he was still funny. So,
yeah,
man,
no, I mean,
just, man, you know, just having, you know, just coming up through the 90s until now, man, and building relationships with people in their infancy stages of stardom, to seeing, them become who they are now. There's so many stories, man. So many stories.
Well, I'm so glad you're sharing them with me. I hope, we get it. If you ever have anything else you want to promote, I hope we get to share some more, but I'm really glad we could talk about the music and also, your current journey in politics. I mean, I wish you a lot of luck on the campaign trail.
That, man.
And I hope to soon be calling you councilman.
That's right,
Dupré
Councilman Kelly. I want people who are in hip-hop to realize their power and understand their power and utilize my run, my campaign, and what I'm doing in Newark, New Jersey as a blueprint and as a model for your city. Let's come and build here in Newark, New Jersey. Let's add on to what we're doing here in Newark, New Jersey. Take those jewels and go back to your own city and create the same way. That's why I'm saying this is not just about me. This is about the culture of hip-hop and politics. And we got to do this together, man. That's the only way that we're going to be able to win or get some of the things passed, like laws and legislation that we need passed, is by doing it together. And I need your guys' support. So anybody out there, at the sound of my voice, please, you can text to donate. The text to donate, just like we did for Obama. When we were texting $5 here and there when he was running for his campaign. We can text to donate. Text 1973-846-2211. That's 1973-846-2211. Just text to donate to that number. Text to that number, and text "Do It All" to that number. And once you text to that number, it's going to give you instructions to follow, and you'll be able to donate anything from $1 to $2,600 to my campaign. And I appreciate you guys, man, and thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you. It's been such a pleasure talking with you, and again, good luck.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate you, man.